Hey everyone, welcome to week 13. This is the last week of new content. Um, and so I just want to go over a brief review of last week and then an overview of this week, and then go over the sort of remaining schedule just so we're all on the same page. So this week's topic is permaculture, transition towns, and regenerative agriculture. Three of my favorite topics, to be honest. I really like these because they combine a lot of the principles that we've discussed throughout the semester and sort of combine it into one holistic, and this is key, very practical um, application. And so, a lot of the stuff we've talked about is kind of, water and food and advertising, and sustainable building design and all that. And they all have practical elements. What these do, especially permaculture, I would say permaculture stands out above the rest because really it integrates all of those concepts, but it's very much solutions focused, action oriented. It's meant to be applied on from a personal residential scale to towns and cities and even countries. And so hopefully this resonates with you as well. Before that, I just want to go over a brief review of last week. Remember last week, the theme was water. We talked about dead zones and eutrophication. Remember, eutrophication is just excess nutrients in the water, that causes dead zones all over the world, including in the Chesapeake and the Delaware. The Chesapeake's been a really big problem. It kind of destroyed um, the oyster habitat there. So, and the oyster industry is really still trying to recover from that. But we talked about the one in the Gulf of Mexico, which is kind of the most infamous one. And so remember that's because of this excess nutrients in the soil. You have these algal blooms, and then when they enter into open water, they sort of like settle down, and they have a chance to sort of just accumulate. And the problem is not so much the algae all over there, although excuse me, there are toxic algae. But with regards to dead zones, the problem is that those algae sink to the bottom, and then the organisms that digest the algae, they actually feed on oxygen. Algae, they provide oxygen for what it's worth. But then the organisms that feed on those algae, they actually take oxygen from the bottom. And so that's why it is most extant on the bottom of whatever body of water it is. Um, we looked at, one of the key themes last week was privatization. This is something that's happening all over the world, not just with water. This happens with a lot of resources, but water in particular. There's a lot of case studies of this happening all over the world, both historically and contemporarily. But privatization is when you take a public resource and you privatize it. So you take something that was basically provided to people or owned communally, whether it's by a town, a city, a country, whatever, and then you sell it off to a private individual, corporation, etc., and then they have control over that resource. And so there are some benefits to that. Remember that when you privatize something, it tends to be used a little more efficiently. That's sort of avoid that tragedy of the commons type of situation. But it also tends to become more expensive, as we looked at in a couple of examples in Cochabamba and Coatesville, PA, and then south. There's examples in the videos from South Africa and Atlanta. So it tends to be more expensive, which then makes it really hard for people that have less money, which, by the way, is a theme we see a lot in sustainability, unfortunately, where the folks that have the least amount of money are the ones that are usually most impacted by a lot of these sustainability issues. But privatization is absolutely no different. There's some more extreme examples like Cochabamba where there was actual riots and violence, but then you have more subtle examples like in Coatesville, PA, right up the road from us, where the water just became really, really expensive. So privatization is a really big issue, in particular with regards to water. We looked briefly at the water use of fracking, which is hydraulic fracturing, which is a major way to extract oil and natural gas. Started here in the U.S., but it's spread all over the world. It's become a really controversial issue, and that's a whole nother, ball of worms or whatever, can of worms, I guess. Ball of wax. I'm mixing my metaphors here, but Fracking is a really big issue is the point, but with regards to water, remember it uses millions of gallons per well, and there's over 1 million wells in the United States alone. Um, and we also looked at ocean acidification, which remember is often referred to as the quote unquote evil twin of climate change. Why is it called evil twin of climate change? Because it's a result of excess carbon dioxide in the air. Remember that when carbon dioxide, much of which is absorbed by the oceans, it looks like possibly even the majority of which is being absorbed by the oceans, which has actually mitigated the impact on the climate because it's actually pulling it out of the atmosphere and sort of keeping us a little more safe. But obviously, climate change is still a really big issue. The problem is when it's absorbed by the oceans, carbon dioxide turns into carbonic acid, which is a really weak acid. And what that does is it lowers the pH, which is acidification. So the big problem here is that, in particular with organisms that have shells made of calcium, coral reefs are among them, and coral reefs are really the base of the food chain of the ocean. So really kind of a big issue that does not get a lot of press. I think probably because we don't really see most of these impacts, but it's really causing a lot of issues. Um, okay, so that's a review of last week, and I'm going to leave it at that for now, and then I'm going to also post a video that provides an overview of this week.